So it's undeniable that my triceps are probably one of my strongest body parts. And if your triceps aren't growing as fast as you want them to, well, you're probably one, not being patient enough, or two, making one of these 3 mistakes that are costing you some tricep gains. Now, I've made them, I've coached people through them, so let's break it down and fix them for good so you can maximize triceps growth. Now, the reason you should be caring about your triceps is because they make up 2/3 of the upper arm. So if your goal is bigger arms, you definitely want to optimize for triceps growth. So with that said, let's get into the first mistake. Now, mistake number 1 is only doing compound lifts for triceps growth. Now, a lot of people see compound lifts as like the holy grail of muscle growth. There's even minimalists that solely rely on presses and dips for their triceps growth. And while I do believe you should be incorporating compound lifts in an overall optimized workout program, if that is all you're doing for triceps, you're definitely leaving gains on the table. Now, ideally, a well-optimized routine for the triceps should include isolation exercises such as tricep pushdowns, overhead tricep extensions, and skull crushers. Basically, the single joint movements that's only training the act of straightening the elbow. With those exercises, you're gonna have the best potential to actually bias the triceps and not have other muscle groups involved. But if you've been watching me for a while, you probably already know this. However, I guarantee the next 2 mistakes you're probably overlooking. Now, mistake number 2 is ignoring shoulder stability on your isolation tricep exercises. However, before we take a deeper dive into this one, if you're struggling to make progress or you're just looking for more personal guidance to take the guesswork out of your fitness goals, I highly recommend you apply to my exclusive one-on-one fitness coaching program where my clients are pretty much getting all of that. Meaning you're getting custom workout programs, recipes, the ability to ask questions as they come up, as well as weekly check-ins. So if that sounds interesting to you, check the link in the description down below. Let's get back into this. All right, so we know we should be doing isolation exercises for our triceps. However, if you're not thinking about shoulder stability, you could be involving other muscle groups without even knowing it. Now, here are the 2 most common scenarios where you might not be stabilizing your shoulder joint properly. First one being arms raising and lowering on the tricep pushdown, which involves the lats. And the second one being shoulders dropping and raising on overhead tricep extension, which brings in the front delts. In both scenarios, we're gonna be getting less tension on the triceps because, again, we're involving other muscle groups which we don't want involved. Now, the only instance I can see that some shoulder movement can be advantageous is on the skull crusher. However, we still shouldn't be overdoing it there either. Instead, you want to keep your shoulder joint stuck in place. So when you're doing a tricep push-down, for example, you want to only focus on straightening and bending the elbow. Notice how the shoulder joint is not moving for me at all. And then on an overhead tricep extension, you want to avoid pumping your shoulders up and down like this. Instead, keep your elbows somewhat flared up to the sky and focus on just straightening the elbow and bending it. Notice how I'm minimizing that shoulder joint movement. Also, real quick, if you're mesmerized by how big my arms look, well, big thanks to Able for providing these gym fits to me. Now, if you're looking to level up your gym wardrobe, I highly recommend Able. I like to think of it as like the quality of outfit at the price point of Gymshark. And as you see, I've been rocking their gear for a while now. So if you're interested, you can use code PATH to get an extra 10% off at checkout. It's a great way to support my ability to continue making these videos. But if not, all good. I just ask that you like this video. It is a super easy way to support me as well, and it's entirely free. But enough of all that, let's get on to the 3rd mistake, which will surely improve the feel of your triceps training. Which brings me to mistake number 3, and that is not being in your scapular plane. Now, this might be a hot take, but I think the biggest limiting factor on your triceps training is actually shoulder discomfort. Now, if your shoulders low-key hurt every time you do a tricep pushdown or an overhead tricep extension, well, that's gonna be distracting. It's not gonna allow you to be able to train your triceps as hard as you can be. Now, you might be thinking, okay, I get it. I gotta be doing tricep pushdown for my scapular plane, but what does that mean? Well, here's the secret sauce to finding the scapular plane. So, typically, when you're doing a tricep push down, you either tend to keep your elbows glued to your sides, or you get very close to it and you have this flared elbow. Now, instead of doing this, all I want you to do is have your arms slightly flared away from your body. And I want you to do the tricep push down or the overhead tricep extension from this position, which seems simple enough, but the problem arises because the typical rope in a commercial gym is not long enough for you to actually be able to do the tricep push down in your scapular plane. And that is where unilateral exercises come into play. Now, unilateral exercises are simply single arm exercises, but there's a very specific way I want you to be performing the single arm tricep push downs and your single arm overhead tricep extensions to avoid that shoulder discomfort. And for the record, unilateral exercises are only advantageous compared to their bilateral counterparts if they are more stable than the bilateral version. So it works for tricep pushdowns, it works for overhead tricep extensions, but I wouldn't recommend it on a skull crusher. But enough yapping, let's get into how I want you to perform these exercises, starting with the crossbody tricep extension. Now, the key thing with the crossbody tricep extension is you want your body to be behind the cables with your body facing sideways with respect to the cables, and your arms should be facing roughly 45 degrees towards the cable, or if that still hurts your shoulder, what you could do is even externally rotate outwards like this. On top of that, you want your arms slightly abducted away from your body. Your arms shouldn't be glued to the side of your body. There should be a natural flare that you would want to be in. And voila, you are now in your scapular plane. Now, like on the tricep pushdown, you want to focus on only straightening the elbow and bending it without your shoulder moving much at all. You don't want to bring your shoulders forward. You don't want to be moving them back either. You want to keep them stabilized, like I said before, in mistake number 2, and just focus on extending that elbow. Now, in the beginning, this exercise might feel awkward, but I promise if you stick with it and you kind of learn the movement pattern week after week, I promise you, you're gonna be able to progressive overload on this exercise without running into that shoulder discomfort like you were before. Also, if you're losing your grip, a quick little tip for you is to take a hook grip rather than a regular grip. This is where you wrap your thumb first and then fingers over the thumb. You're gonna notice you're gonna have a much stronger grip doing it this way. And then when it comes to the second exercise, we're gonna be hitting a unilateral overhead tricep extension. Now it's gonna be similar to the crossbody setup, but instead you just put the cables down towards your hip, roughly. Now we're also gonna be pointing our body sideways, and the training arm is gonna be the arm away from the cable. So if I'm facing this way, it's gonna be my right arm. Now I'm gonna take that same hook grip, take 1 step back, I'm gonna take 2 steps forward and swing the cables over my head. As you see that, I'm getting the cable interact, and then I'm just gonna swing this with both arms up here. Now at this point, your body should be in front of the cables as this, and with my supporting arm, I'm gonna grab the beam to support myself. Now from here, have the elbow of the training arm come in a little bit so that's roughly at a 45-degree angle with respect to your body. If this is 0, this is 90, 45 would be like somewhere around here. At this point, also raise the elbow high so that when you're extending, you're kind of extending in this flared arm path over here, which is going to line up with, again, your scapular plane. Now, if that's a little confusing, the whole idea is you don't want to be like directly upward like this, nor do you want your arm directly downwards over here. You want it to be pointed upwards and outwards in that plane of motion. Now, of course, from here, I'm going to focus on extending the elbow without moving my shoulders. Okay, you don't want to be extending here and having your arms lower. No, you want to keep your arm up high and just focus on moving at the elbow joint and have that shoulder joint stabilized. Now, once again, if the movement feels weird in the beginning, I promise if you stick to it, you kind of get that movement pattern ingrained in your head week after week. I promise you're gonna have a much better time progressive overloading on these exercises without facing that shoulder discomfort. Also, real quick, I think I lied. There might be a third reason why your triceps aren't growing as fast as you want them to, and that is a suboptimal diet. Now, we have one big factor of your diet that is completely in your control is your protein intake. So if you're looking for a solid and not overpriced supplements, so protein, creatine, then I would personally recommend My Protein. I've been taking them since like 2016, and I've been working them for over 2 years now at this point. The main reason why I decided to work with them is I think they're pretty fairly priced, they taste good, and they are third-party tested. So if you're interested in getting some supplements, you can use code TPATH right now and get 50% off your order. That is a big discount. And of course, as always, the support truly goes a long way, and it's truly appreciated. And you can find the links to My Protein, Able, all in the link description, my coaching program as well. But with that said, those were the 3 worst mistakes that you should be avoiding if you want to optimize your triceps growth. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Leave a like to support my page, hit subscribe to Level Up Your Physique, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.